Welcome, everyone, to my PowerPoint about the top 10 worst designed Hearthstone cards, in my opinion. I have to talk about Deathstalker Rexxar to start. I have to. It's on the thumbnail. People are going to get really upset because I say he's poorly designed. And he is. It's a 6-mana hero card that is, gain 5 armor, battlecry, deal 2 damage to all enemy minions. And then your hero power is 2 mana to build a custom Zombeast. Is Rexxar awesome? Do I love Rexxar? All of these things are true, right? I love playing Rexxar. It's one of my favorite cards to ever exist. Playing back in 2018, Roscon's Rumble in mid-range, aggro hunter, and dropping Deathstalker Rexxar and instantly winning the game because he was the best card in the entire game by far was awesome. However, it is blatantly a lie to say this card was well-balanced or well-designed. It is a lie. And if you say that, I don't know what to tell you. You are just wrong. You're just wrong. The thing about Deathstalker Rexxar is it is a 1-card win condition. And those are usually not fair. They're usually really unfun to play against, and there's a reason we haven't seen a lot of those in a long time. Galakrond, the priest one, is actually the last card we've seen that was a 1-card win condition in the same way of Deathstalker Rexxar, and good. That Galakrond priest that existed during Darkmoon Faire was one of the most unfun decks to ever exist, and Deathstalker Rexxar does the same thing. Look at it this way. You are playing an aggro deck. You are going to run out of resources, especially as Hunter when you don't have card draw. What happens when you just happen to play a 6-mana card that gives you infinite cards and lets you go infinite in fatigue because of cards like Raptor Hatchling? Raptor Hatchling, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a 1-mana 2/1 from Angora with Death Rattle. Shuffle a 1-mana 4/3, it's now a 4/5, got buffed, into your deck. The thing is fatigue mattered back in the day. Fatigue did matter back in the day, and Deathstalker Rexxar completely would offset your fatigue and make it so, well, you didn't lose to control decks. You heard that right. An aggro deck that could not lose to control decks. It couldn't lose. That's why mid-range Hunter was so strong during Roscon's Rumble. No control deck could beat it. And look, I get it. People really like Deathstalker Rexxar. It is a fan favorite card. But objectively, a 1-card combo that gives you infinite value and lets you stave off fatigue better than Warrior could, because again, that was Warrior's whole thing, is it would play Direhorn Hatchling to shuffle more copies into their deck to stave off fatigue. Deathstalker Rexxar could do that also, to win in fatigue against a control deck. That's not including the fact that other aggro decks lost instantly because, again, Rexxar would clear the board. Rexxar would give you Vicious Scalehide, which is a 2-mana 1/3 rush lifesteal. It would give you that, and then you could add other stats to it because, again, it's a Zombeast, so you combine 2 beasts together to make them bigger. So you would get giant rush minions with lifesteal. You could then play Dire Frenzy to shuffle more copies into your deck and then have infinite fatigue, or infinite draws. And again, fatigue used to matter in Hearthstone. Fatigue stopped mattering at about 2019, mid 2019, if you ask me. But again, Rexxar's from 2017. Yeah, it wasn't that good in 2017. Deathstalker Rexxar became significantly better post-rotation when it started to have, only the 2017 cards, which were absurdly overpowered for its time, and then cards like Vicious Scalehide in its pool. That's when Deathstalker Rexxar became really good. And again, by the time of Roscon's Rumble, Deathstalker Rexxar was the best card in the game. It just was. I really, you're hard-pressed to say that it wasn't. I'm going to be honest with you. And that's not good. I like aggro decks. I really do. I don't think aggro decks should be able to have infinite value and be able to go in fatigue infinitely against control decks. I do not think that is well designed. I think that is incredibly imbalanced, and I don't think Deathstalker Rexxar is a well-designed card. Which is really funny because another issue with Deathstalker Rexxar's design is the fact that its pool isn't curated. And again, that's another poorly designed aspect of this card, is that it's so unbelievably bad and wild because the pool is worthless. If Deathstalker Rexxar had, a curated pool, would it be a good card? No. But would it be significantly better? Hell yeah. Beasts are the largest tribe in the game, and the conditions for Rexxar there's a lot of them. It's it has to be 5 or less mana, the first stage is all minions with like text and effects, but it can only be up to like 2 or 3 lines of text. And then the second stage is only minions that have keywords or something like that. It's rough. It really is. Like, Rexar is he's just such a card of all time. I'm going to be so honest with you. And I think he's really terribly designed. I really do. I don't think that anything Deathstalker Rexar provided was better for the game. And yeah, I like him. I loved playing him. But that doesn't... Just because you like playing something doesn't mean it's well designed or well thought out. That really doesn't. And people don't realize that. All right, let's talk about some more. Let's talk about some live colder takes. I have to talk about pirates. Oh my God, pirates are terribly designed. So we knew pirates were terribly designed in 2016 when Patches the Pirate came out. Patches the Pirate was a 1-mana 1/1 pirate. Now it's Demon Pirate with charge. After you play a pirate, summon this from your deck. It lost charge when it was rotated to wild because, unsurprisingly, Blizzard knew that would be way too overpowered. And guess what? Even without charge, Patches is still one of, if not the best cards ever printed. Ever. And all it is a free 1/1 that you get when you just play a pirate. Crazy. I know. It's insane. Pirate decks have been utterly dominant over the wild format for years. They dominate, or they haven't really... Let me rephrase this. They've been good in standard, but only after, only for short periods of time. It's really just their utter domination of wild because, well, they're incredibly low curve, which already puts them above every other tribe in the game. Every other tribe in the game does not have minions that are as efficient or as cheap as pirates. The only tribe that comes close, and that's after 2 back-to-back expansions with obscenely powerful cards, is Elementals. Elementals went from one of the, a middling tribe that wasn't very good to the second best tribe in the game because of 2 back-to-back absurdly powerful expansions. And it's only because of Mage. Even Elemental Shaman isn't even that good. It's Elemental Mage. But I digress. Let's look at some other problem cards for pirates. Problems. I mean, I don't think you're pressed to say these were problem cards. We'll start with Treasure Distributor because it was nerfed. It was finally nerfed. It was originally, and is now currently, a 1-mana 1/2 after you summon a pirate, give it +1 attack this turn. But then they buffed it for no reason. They buffed it because pirates were bad in standard after they didn't print a single good pirate for standard. So it's really not hard to understand why it was terrible. They printed it in Whizbang's Workshop too, before pirates were even in a fucking perils. So the Treasure Distributor was buffed to also gain the attack itself. So what would happen very consistently is you would play Treasure Distributor. You would then pull Parachute Brigand, which is a 2-mana 2/2 pirate. After you play a pirate, summon this from your hand, and you would pull Patches from your deck. So your turn 1 would be a 1-mana 3/2, a 0-mana 3/2, and a 0-mana 2/1. It's my phone. Sorry about that. It's my ringer is my outro. I've mentioned this before. It's really funny. Sorry about that. I have to buy a new car, so I got a phone call. Anyway, yeah, 1-mana 3/2, 0-mana 3/2, 0-mana 2/1 on turn 1. And guess what? It was the only single playable aggro deck because not only did it push every other aggro deck out of the game, you couldn't play any other aggro deck, but there's also Renathal. I didn't put Renathal on this list because I have to admit Renathal is okay. He's not top 10 worst design. He's probably top 20 in my opinion, but not top 10. Still though, let's look at some other really broken cards. Ship's Trojan, 1-mana 1/2 Dragon Pirate. After you summon a minion, give it +1 health. So the opposite of Treasure Distributor, but it's better than Treasure Distributor. At least the nerfed version of Treasure Distributor. 1 health in an aggro deck is more important than 1 attack. There is a simple truth that making it so your minions are harder to clear is better than dealing more damage. Because if your minions live for at least 1 more turn, they will deal more damage than +1 attack would have provided them as long as they have 2 or more attack. Which, again, most pirates do. Especially when you add in Hosen Roughhouser. To be fair, you don't run Hosen Roughhouser in a Ship's Trojan deck. You only really run Hosen Roughhouser with Sigil of Skydiving, but I mean, these 2 cards are just disgusting. I think Hosen Roughhouser is probably fine on its own. It's a 3-mana 2/4 pirate. Whenever another friendly pirate attacks, you have +1/+1. It's like was it Bloodsail Cap? Oh god, what is it called? It's like the 3-mana 3/3 epic from Classic. That's your pirates have +1/+1. It's like that, but it scales more because it's more than just one. The real problem with Hosen Roughhouser though is Sigil of Skydiving. 2-mana Fel spell. At the start of your next turn, summon 3 1/1 pirates with charge. So, you know how, like, the biggest weakness to aggro decks is that, well, if they play minions and then you remove it, those minions don't get to attack. Well, what if they just get 3 tokens with charge that all get buffed by every single pirate buff? Like, giving them +1 attack, or giving them +1/+1 when they attack. You start to really paint a picture about how absurdly powerful the pirate cards are if you have played these decks before, or if you've ever played Wild, ever, in the last forever, you will understand why pirates are a problem. No, like, genuinely before Perils in Paradise, no other tribe in the entire game was remotely close to pirates. Elementals were still probably not top 3 before the Great Dark Beyond, but again, now that Great Dark Beyond is back, and we have like cards like Blazing Accretion and Solar Flare, I mean, pirates are still better, and that says a lot. That we have 3-mana draw 3, or 3-mana 3/1 draw 3, and 0-mana deal 2 to all enemies, and elementals are still not as good as pirates. Elemental Mage literally can draw its entire deck by turn 6. It can have... there are possible openers to have a full board that is 20 attack on turn 2, and pirates are still better. That's how broken pirates are. I don't know what else there is to say. Pirates are so unbelievably terribly designed. They're so unbelievably stronger and choking of all other tribes that to say they are not poorly designed is just lying. It just is lying. I'm sorry, it just is. I like aggro decks, and I hate pirates. Pirates have warped what aggro can be in the game. Pirate decks are all swarm-based. They're no longer can aggro decks just play 1, maybe 2 minions a turn and then just target face. They have to go extremely wide on board, which means that more and more hyper-efficient AoE removal has been printed, which has completely snuffed out every single other type of aggro deck to exist in the game. Not including the fact that Renethal gives you 40 health because you need to be able to deal with pirates. You just need to. Fuck, dude, I hate pirates. And then we get the Far Watchpost. So, I get the Far Watchpost probably isn't the most egregious card on this list, and I'm putting it early because of that. But it was a 2-mana 2/4 with can attack. It's now a 2-mana 2/3. After your opponent draws a card, it costs 1 more up to 10. So you would play this you would always coin this. There was never, ever a situation you would not coin this card. So you would coin this on 1. It was impossible for your opponent to kill it on turn 2. Unless they played a minion and had a spell. Or I guess they had Rush. However, it's still a 2-mana 2/4. So it would trade into their minions. They were guaranteed to have at least 1 card cost 1 more. And if you're playing as most decks in the game, you don't have a way to kill this from hand. It is a 2-mana 2/4. It's overstated. With a giant upside of making it so your opponent's cards cost 1 more. You have to remember that 2-mana spells that deal 3 damage with an effect are the standard for Hearthstone. So, a 2-mana spell should typically be able to kill a 2-mana minion, because 2-mana minions get to attack more often, and they have health, which allows them to trade into other minions. That's just how the game has worked forever. 2-mana spells typically are able to kill 2-mana minions, right? You could not kill Far Watchpost with a 2-mana spell. So, what the fuck? Actually, what the fuck? You would play every deck in the game played this card. Face Hunter played this card, and it's Face Hunter played this card. I'm telling you, there's no reason to not play this card in every deck. It would come down, and your opponent just had to let it go off at least 2 or 3 times. And that's not well designed in the slightest. The thing is Far Watchpost, after it was nerfed, was still a good card. It was still a very powerful card that saw a lot of play. However, unanimously, people agreed that it was better for the game for it to have 3 health than 4, which says a lot, because at least it could die to the standard Dark Bomb effect of 2 mana deal 3. I don't understand how stuff like this gets through playtesting. Because, like, yeah, you can make the argument that pirates, right, it took them years to build up this many pirates, and they definitely didn't plan cards like Sigil of Skydiving, you know, 6 years ago, right? They definitely didn't do that. But Far Watchpost? We know, we have always known, since Dark Bomb came out, that 2 mana deal 3 is the standard, and cards that have effects should die to spells. And they did not playtest this. They just didn't. There's no possible way they playtested this card. Because if they did, they would have known that there's no possible way this was a fair effect at 4 health. Especially because, again, if you tried to kill it with minions, a 2 mana 2/4 is a really good body for bumping into small minions. Or getting bumped into, I should say. I don't get it. I really don't. Like, this whole list is a bunch of cards that really makes you think, what the actual fuck were they thinking?
Chamber of Aidus is my most hated card ever.
I dare say, if there was ever an era that I was truly going to quit Hearthstone, it is when Caverns of Time came out. Not only was Caverns of Time a terrible, terrible flop that was absolutely terrible, right? Twist sucked ass. They said that it was going to be a wild update and then they lied to us. They actually straight up lied to us. And they tried to cover it up by changing it in their roadmap. The roadmap originally said wild update, and then it was changed to twist. I'm not fucking joking. And then, to top it off, they release, not only do they buff multiple discard Warlock cards in prior to this, and then discard Warlock was the best deck in the game before the cards even came out, but then they released Chamber of Aidus. This card, everyone knew this card was going to be overpowered. Everyone. No one could have told you it wouldn't be. And you have to understand that you can't make the argument that they weren't thinking about Wild when they made this card like you can for other cards, right? Because of the fact that they have
not made it for standard. It was a straight to Wild card.
Sorry, got upset about this. It is a straight to Wild card. Yeah, they made Twist, but Twist hasn't been fucking Twist Caverns of Time since like the 2nd month of Twist. So what does that mean? They printed a straight to Wild card knowing that it was going to absurdly break Wild. It was a 2 mana, 3 durability location. Now it's a 3 mana, 2 durability location. Look at 3 cards in your hand and choose one to discard, draw 2 cards. At one point, across all ranks, Chamber of Aidus had a 92% win rate in the mulligan. There has never, ever been a single card in the history of the game to have a higher mulligan win rate, and that includes Prince Keliseth. And Prince Keliseth was claimed to be one of the most high roll cards to ever exist. Did not have as high as a win rate in the mulligan as Chamber of Aidus. Of course, you know, that's across all ranks, right? So maybe it wasn't that good. In Legend, it was 70% win rate in the mulligan. You'd play this card, and you won the game 70% of the time. And you would always keep this card in your mulligan, which meant that was real. That you were guaranteed to fucking win the game. If you played this card on turn 2, or coined it on turn 1, you were guaranteed to win the game. What more is there to say? You would discard Soul Barrage. I've already claimed that Soul Barrage is one of the... I've already said it 100 times that Soul Barrage is one of the worst design cards as well. It is a 5 mana shadow spell. Whenever you player discard this, deals 6 damage, randomly split among all enemies. So, the most powerful discard damage spell for 6 years was Fist of Draxus. 4 mana. When you play or discard this, deal 4 damage to a random enemy. Soul Barrage is +2 damage, and because it's randomly split, if your opponent has a board, it will clear their board. If your opponent has like 1 minion with 1 health, it doesn't randomly have a 50-50 chance of sending all the damage into that minion. And Soul Barrage also got fucking Tome Tampering banned from Wild. And Tome Tampering, yeah, it probably would have been toxic, do not get me wrong. However, Soul Barrage got a card banned from Wild. So objectively, it is a terribly designed card. Because Tome Tampering existed in Wild for a full expansion without being broken. That's how broken Soul Barrage is. And guess what? Chamber of Acidius? Even worse. Discard Warlock is the worst designed deck or archetype ever, in my opinion. I think Discard Warlock... I think I could have made an entire video just about how terribly designed Discard Warlock is. But Chamber of Acidius, I don't know what more there is to say. This card is just unbelievably toxic for the game. And it has still seen play. It's still a good card. That's the thing. At 3 mana, it's still a good card. Yeah, it doesn't see play anymore, but that's because Discard Warlock sucks. It does. But the main reason you were playing this card after the nerf was to use it in Questline Warlock. And we'll get to Questline Warlock. Don't worry. I know people don't like that one. I don't like it either. But yeah, so you used to play Fatigue version of Questline Warlock, and well, Chamber, it draws a lot of cards. And you can discard Hand of Gul'dan, which is a 6 mana spell. When played or discarded, draw 3 cards. Yeah, I really think that Chamber is the biggest failure ever. I think Caverns of Time is already the biggest flop that has ever happened in Hearthstone, even more than like Duels or Mercenaries. And like Chamber's big part of that. It just is. Then we have Reno Lone Ranger. So Reno had 2 nerfs, but 3 total changes. It went from 8 mana to 9 mana. Then it went from 9 mana to 10 mana, and at the same time, it went from if your deck has no duplicates to if your deck started with no duplicates. I know that doesn't sound like a nerf in some senses, but the reason it was changed like that, and all the other Highlander cards were changed as well, which technically counts as a nerf, was because Reno Warrior just didn't run Highlander. It ran duplicates, and then you just drew enough cards that it didn't matter. So this card was so powerful. And I guess Bran was also so powerful, but still. They were so powerful that they made you not even use the basic fucking mechanic that people have been using in the game since 20... Sorry, I got a text. I'm talking to people. Since, when did League of Explorers come out? Like 2015? Yeah. I don't know what there's to say. I really don't. This is also ignoring the fact that Reno Lone Ranger, it was 8 mana, Battlecry if your deck has no duplicates, empty the enemy board, and limit it to 1 space for a turn. It still is empty the enemy board, and limit it to 1 space per turn. What that means is it's not destroying minions. It poofs them. However, unlike every other card in the entire game, it works on dormant cards and uninteractables, like Sargeras' Portal, Raystraza's Purified Egg, 2 things that were very relevant, actually, and if Reno didn't exist, would be way more relevant. And then, the pièce de résistance. I know.
It poofs the dormant starship.
My first game of the expansion, I have a built-up starship. My opponent plays Reno on turn 8. And I lose my 8 fucking piece starship. I had 8 pieces in the starship. I couldn't even launch it. It's one thing if Reno would poof the starship after it was launched, right? And you lose the death rattle. That's one thing, right? That's fine. Okay, it's a 10 mana card. It doing that is fine, right? But it removes the starship before it is even launched. Starships are already really bad. The only one that is even remotely playable is the Hunter one. Or I guess if you include Druid, that doesn't even play with their starship. They just use the Anchorite Defense Crystal and Hydration Station and just get a big starship that gives a lot of armor. Still, Reno counters all of the entire keyword of a set. There is only one keyword in the Great Dark Beyond. They added Spellburst back, but the new keyword is Starship. Reno single-handedly counters the entire mechanic so much to the point that classes like Death Knight cannot use their Starship, even though, relatively speaking, it should be strong on paper. Yeah, some of the other Starships are bad, like Druids is bad, Demon Hunters is okay, I guess, Warlocks is terrible, and then Rogues is not that great, but Demon Hunter Starship, or Death Knight Starship, is not that bad, and you can't fucking use it because of this card. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm dumb for thinking, why would you make a card like this, knowing full well that a year later you have an entire mechanic coming out that gets countered by this card? By one single card? And it's still a strong card. It is still objectively a strong card in other situations, other than just poofing the Starship. And they still left it in the game. A full year later. I have to point out that Showdown in the Badlands has the most nerfs of any expansion to ever exist. Even more than United in Stormwind. I don't know. I don't know. What is there to say about Reno Lone Ranger that has not already been said by every single person ever? It's one of the most toxic cards to ever exist. It's one of the least fun cards to ever play into. And I think that Reno is probably one of the worst cards ever made. I didn't actually rate or list these in a top 10 because, I think it's a little more subjective than that, right? Because I can't really be objective. I think that two cards can be both as I think all of these cards are equally terribly designed, but again, power level versus design is two different things, right? Yeah, Reno is more powerful than say, or I don't know. It's just I have to move on before I say something I shouldn't say. And then we have the Demon Seed. I want to talk about specifically D6 Warlock. Yes, the Demon Seed was strong. Yes, it was overpowered. Yes, it was meta warping. But I need to talk about two other cards that were even worse than the Demon Seed. They were worse. I don't care what your take is. I don't care what you think about the Demon Seed. Ruined Mithril Rod and Sealer of Souls were worse than the Demon Seed itself. Yes, the Demon Seed is a broken card. But Ruined Mithril Rod was 3 mana, then 4 mana, is now 5 mana, and is still a good card. 3 mana, 0/2. After you draw 4 cards, reduce the cost of cards in your hand by 1, lose 1 durability. So you're playing Warlock, which is the third or, at any given point, it's somewhere between second or third best deck in the entire game at drawing cards. It is 3 mana to discount your entire hand by 2. In Warlock. How is it possible that this card made it past the testing phase? Again, they do not test cards. They just cannot. If they say they do, they're lying. I'm sorry. They have to be lying because you can't release cards like this and then say that they were thoroughly play tested. You can't. You actually just fucking can't. And it's not even the best card on this page. I will talk about the Demon Seed for a second. It was a 1 mana spell. Questline, take 6 damage on your turns. Reward, lifesteal, deal 3 damage to enemy hero. It was 6, 7, 8. It was eventually nerfed a bunch of different times. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it is now currently take 10, 10, 10 damage on your turns for all the effects. Yeah, the Demon Seed was incredibly overpowered. I will not lie. It healed you, which is actually really relevant. Taking damage actually was very relevant, like the lifesteal. And I hate the card. People hate the card. It's just not fun. The reward is, of course, Tamsin, which is a 5 mana 7/7 battle cry for the rest of the game. When you take damage on your turns, deal it to your opponent instead. You instantly cannot lose to Fatigue. You can't lose to any of your own self-damage effects. You cannot lose to control decks because, well, who cares? If you're both going to Fatigue anyway, they die. You don't take Fatigue damage. But the real killer, the real problem card, is Stealer of Souls. 4 mana, 2/6 demon. After you draw a card, change its cost to health instead of mana. Not only would this work with the Demon Seed, but Stealer of Souls is the first ever banned card in Hearthstone. It's not the Demon Seed. Stealer of Souls was the first ever banned card. The Demon Seed was the second banned first, or the second ever. Stealer of Souls, you would play cards like Mal'Ganis or Violet Illusionist, and then because of the way that health costs counted back in the day, you could play those cards and not take any damage. So what happened is you would play Stealer of Souls, draw through your deck, and you had infinite mana because your cards had no cost. I'm not joking when I say Stealer of Souls could easily be considered the best card ever. I don't think that that's a hot take. And what more can I say? What more could I possibly say? Like, I don't know more to say. Guys, do you think that infinite mana is good for the game? Do you think infinite mana on a 4-drop is good for the game? What do you guys think? You think a 4 mana 2/6 that gives you infinite mana is good for the game? I don't. And you still played it in Standard. That's the thing. You still played it in Standard because it would complete your Demon Seed. And then, well, after you played Tamsin, it dealt the damage to your opponent. I don't have the energy to be angry about these cards actually, because I have to be angry about other stuff later. So I'm gonna move on, but to say that I hate these cards is such an unbelievable understatement that I don't know what else to say. Then we have Encanther's Flow. Encanther's Flow was a 2 mana, then it was 3 mana, then it was 4 mana. It's almost like there's a repeated trend that cards that get nerfed multiple times are terribly designed. Arcane Spell for Mage. Reduce the cost of spells in your deck by 1. 2 mana. Reduce the cost of spells in your deck by 1. I'm going to let you, like, marinate for a second and think about it this way. You're playing Mage. You run an entire deck of only spells. Suddenly, your entire deck costs 1 less because you played this card.
And you can have 2 copies of it.
You could play Deck of Lunacy and make your entire deck, be bigger spells and then discount it. You can have Refreshing Spring Water, which was originally 4 mana. It was nerfed to 5 mana, draw 2 cards. If their spells, refresh 2 mana. So if you discount the Spring Water to 3 mana, you actually get positive on mana. And because Questline Mage was only spells, you only ran spells in Questline Mage, this card had no downside. There's no condition. There's nothing. It's just 2 mana or 3 mana when it was still playable at 3 mana. Discount your entire deck by 1. And people think Quasar is a broken card, and it's 6 mana to discount your entire deck by 3. And they print Encanther's Flow. I get that Encanther's Flow came out 4 years ago. What more can I possibly say about how unbelievably dog shit designed this card is? Would you guys play 2 mana, discount your entire deck by 1? Would you play a card like that? I would. I don't think there's any deck in the entire game that ever wouldn't play a card that just read 2 mana, discount your entire deck by 1. What deck wouldn't play that? Aggro decks would play it, and then they would run like more expensive draw cards to draw more cards. Control decks would play it. Combo decks would obviously play it. I'm sorry, I don't have the energy to be angry about this because I have to talk about fucking Yog later. Because obviously I have to talk about Yog, and I have to be angry about Yog because Yog is one of the worst design cards. I think it's fair to say Yog is the worst design card ever. I don't know what slide it's on, but no, we'll get to Iceblock next. Obviously, you have to talk about Iceblock when you're talking about terribly designed cards. 3 mana Frost Spell, Secret, when your hero takes fatal damage, prevent it and become immune this turn. I think that if you could not discover Iceblock, I wouldn't hate it as much. But you can randomly discover this card. So what that means is your opponent plays Iceblock, they play another Iceblock, They randomly discover another Ice Block. They randomly discover another Ice Block. They play Rewind to get more Ice Blocks. They play Rewind again to play more Ice Blocks. And it's genuinely possible for your opponent to play at least 5 Ice Blocks in a game. It is. Hostage Mage has proven how powerful Ice Block is, how unbelievably overpowered repeating Ice Blocks is. Hostage Mage doesn't even really win the game. Yeah, it can kind of whittle you down, but its main win condition is playing as many Ice Blocks as possible. It's like, what? What? Ice Block is the oldest card on this list, I think. Because it's, you know, it's from Classic. Ice Block was banned from Standard. I know that they don't call it banned from Standard. They call it Hall of Fame, which means rotated from the Classic set to the Wild. But it's effectively the same as a ban. I get that it's not technically the same, right? Because that would technically mean, like, other cards were banned before Sealer of Souls. But to call Ice Block, like, anything but a terribly designed card and saying anything other than people hate it, I don't know a single person that likes Ice Block. I've never met a single person that likes Ice Block. Every single fucking person wants something changed about this card. Like, there's a million ways to change it, too. You could remove it from the Discover pool, and that would probably do a lot, right? You could make it so you can't discover it at all, so cards like Rewind can't do it. But another issue is cards that replay cards, like Fard Dawn Grasp, or the Galactic Orb, or Ramath. Ice Block is such an unbelievably clunky card to fix as well, that there's no real way to fix this card. And that's the thing about a lot of other cards, is you can nerf a lot of other cards, but how do you change Ice Block? It's a secret, so it has to be 3 mana. That's the thing. Because it's a secret, it has to be 3 mana, or it wouldn't work. All secrets of every class have to cost the same amount. There is no secret, no matter how powerful, no matter how weak, that costs a different amount than every other secret in their class. You can't necessarily get around Ice Block easily because, well, your opponent can tutor Ice Block. You can't tutor ways to deal with it. Hunter is the only class in the game that has a decent way to tutor an answer to Ice Block, and that's with the card Flare. If you hadn't guessed, I may or may not have named myself after that card because of how much I hate Ice Block. I think it would be fair to say that if Ice Block were removed from the game, or if Ice Block were never printed, Hearthstone would objectively be a better game. I don't think that that's a hot take. I don't think it is at all. I think Ice Block is just... Ice Block is so in-depthly grained with terrible design that it's like the only thing holding Mage together as a class in Wild. That's how terribly designed cards like Ice Block are, and how terribly designed the Mage class is because of cards like Ice Block, and wanting to make cards that work in a theme of, well, not playing for board, and just playing for, hey, I'm gonna fucking freeze your shit, and I'm gonna gain 1,000,000 armor, and I'm not gonna die, and that's how early Mage was, because of cards like Ice Block. And it warped the entire design philosophy of the class. I just... What else is there to say? What else is there to say about Ice Block that hasn't already been said? Yog Suron Unleashed. I am the lucid dream, the monster in your nightmares, the fiend of 1,000 faces, and the progenitor of your demise. What better way to describe this card? 15 mana, nerfed to 9 and then 10 mana. Nerfed twice, by the way. 7/5 Titan, costs 1 less for each spell you've cast this game. That was then changed to, after you use a Titan ability, cast 2 random spells. Yog Suron was so powerful that if your deck couldn't play it, it was unplayable. If your deck could not play Yog Suron, it could not play the game. It was so powerful that in Wild, there were only 2 playable decks in the entire game. Questline Druid and Miracle Rogue. Only 2 playable decks in all of Wild. There were 5,000 cards in Wild, and only 1 single card mattered. Yog Suron Unleashed. What does that say about this card? That of the 5,000 cards in the game, only 1 card actually mattered. If you don't know what Yog's Titan's abilities are, one of them is take control of an enemy minion. That's it. You just take your opponent's minion for 0 mana. The other is force all enemy minions to attack each other. So you play Mass Hysteria on only your opponent's board for free. And then the other was to fill your hand with 1/1 Chaotic Tendrils. And, you know, Chaotic Tendrils, if you don't know, they're 1 mana 1/1s. Battlecry cast a random 1-cost spell, and it gets increased up to 10 for every time you play a Tendril. That one actually was still really good, because a lot of the time you would play, like, you would just have, like, Yog on board, because it wouldn't get cleared, because it's a fucking 7/5, which is also huge. It's a huge body. Yog is just... And I think another part of the reason why Yog was so unbelievably, disgustingly overpowered is that all of the decks that would abuse Yog Suron Unleashed also abused anomalies. And anomalies are already probably the worst mechanic they've ever added to the game, single-handedly. So to make it so every deck that is best at using Yog is also best at using anomalies? Wow. Wow. Talk about the worst meta the game has ever had. There is no worse meta than the beginning of Fall of Ulduar mini set. There isn't one. And the thing is with most of the cards that I am talking about, right? Yeah, they might be meta warping in one format at a time, right? Reno Lone Ranger, yeah, you could say it was meta warping in Standard, and in Wild, it was strong, but not really meta warping. Yeah, most of the good decks were Reno decks, but still, I wouldn't call it meta warping in Wild. To say that Yog Suron Unleashed isn't the most meta warping card of all time across both formats at the same time is wrong. Objectively, it is wrong. Look. Some of the cards on this list, you could say that is my subjective opinion about being a terribly designed card and being overpowered, right? You could argue that, right? You could say that, like, Encanther's Flow, for Watchpost, stuff like that, right? That's more my opinion. But if Yog Suron isn't on your top 10 of the worst designed cards ever, I don't know what to tell you. You are just wrong. You are objectively wrong. Imagine a world where you can't play literally any deck except ones that run this card. And to top it off, the second best deck in the format, which was Miracle Rogue, still lost to Questline Druid. So what actually happened is you were supposed to play Questline Druid in Wild. Usually in Wild, you can play a couple of decks if you really want to win, right? You can play like maybe 5, maybe 6 decks that are probably pretty good. You know, Tier 1 probably has like 3 decks, Tier 2 probably has like 4 or 5 decks, right? No. You had to play Questline Druid if you wanted to win. And the thing is Questline Druid evolved to beat Questline Druid in the mirror. If you started to run Groovy Cat, which is a 2-mana 2/1 Battlecry and Death Rattle, your hero power gains +1 damage this game, the mirror stopped from going to Fatigue, like it did before, to whoever played the Groovy Cat first won the mirror. That's how meta warping Yog was, is the meta became one deck playing against itself, and if you didn't play the right card, you lost the mirror. I don't know what more there is to say. I really don't. Whoever designed Yog, I'm going to be honest with you, I hope that they never get to design a Hearthstone card ever again. I really do. I think that Yog Suron Unleashed should be on that guy's permanent record for if he ever, or whoever it was, if they ever go back into making a card design or a game design ever, it should be on their permanent record. I think they should be punished for making this card. Wait, did I? Oh, I skipped over Snip Snap. Oh my gosh. And then we have Snip Snap. Oh my gosh, I actually skipped the slide. I've never done that before. Snip Snap. So Snip Snap is a 3-mana 2/3 mech with Magnetic, Echo, Death Rattle, summon 2 1/1 Microbots. So many players that have played the game since Snip Snap was introduced know about a change that was made because of Snip Snap. Echo, or repeatable this turn effects, no longer can cost less than 1 mana. You might be wondering, why is that important? Well, when you look at a card like Mech Warper, which is a 2-mana 2/3. Your mechs cost 1 less. If you had 3 Mech Warpers in play, because of Glinda Crowskin, which was a 6-mana 3/7, your minions have Echo, I think it is, you could play 3 Mech Warpers, and then you could play infinite Snip Snaps. You could also play it with Summoning Portal. Summoning Portal is a 4-mana, it's like a 0/5, I think. Your minions cost 2 less, but not less than 1. All not less than 1 effects get negated by effects that just say cost 1 less, by the way. So, like, I mean, Summoning Portal plus Mech Warper, right? Mech Warper would make it so cards could cost 0. So what would happen is you would play one of those cards and get Mech Warpers out, and then you would play infinite Snip Snaps. And as long as you had the APM, you could get hundreds of stats on board. And the thing is, well, most classes couldn't deal with it. Most decks in the entire game couldn't deal with it. You know what decks could deal with it, though? Warlock. Warlock was the best class in the entire game at dealing with Snip Snap Warlock. So, what happened is, again, every game would come down to a Warlock mirror, where you'd play Plague of Flames to destroy your opponent's Snip Snap. Then, you would play your own Snip Snap, and if they Plague of Flames you guys just, like, passed until the game was over. I don't really remember what they did past that, I'm gonna be honest with you, because Snip Snap usually won the game. So putting next to infinite stats on board as early as like turn 4 or 5, back in 2019 when Snip Snap came out, even though it's technically a Boomsday card, it actually came out in 2019 because it was the first ever card like that. I don't know, they never did it again, but yeah, Snip Snap is just, what do I say? It's so unbelievably terribly designed that it got a keyword nerfed. Do you know how broken a card has to be to get a keyword nerfed? I can't think of any other scenarios where that has happened off the top of my head. An entire keyword in Echo got nerfed because of Snip Snap. I'm being genuinely serious. Has that ever happened another time? I don't think it has. I might be wrong, but I don't think it has. Like, I'm sorry, but what? It's insane. It's just insane. I don't know. I don't know what else. I don't know what else to say. Okay, that's gonna be it for me. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me a thing down below. What are your top 10 least, or most poorly designed cards ever? I'd love to hear it. I think that, you have to put Yog on there. I think that of any argument you could ever make, Yog has to be there. There is no other card that can be worse than Yog. There just isn't. Objectively, there cannot be. I'm sorry. It just has to be Yog. Even if you want to say Naga Sea Witch should have been on here, which, again, Naga's probably in my top 20. Yog is worse. Yog is worse. It just is. And I don't know, man. I don't know. It's okay, though, because they just announced Hearthstone is getting a StarCraft crossover. Fuck all the bitches that were telling me on Twitter that, no, we're never going to get other IPs in Hearthstone. Fuck you. Fuck you. I hate your ass. Get fucked, idiot. Yeah. All right. See you guys. I'm just so pissed off, man.
Shadows are rising again!
Darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tomb. They grab their whips and fedoras. These legends are the